Good morning again. Wow, we're missing a couple who disappeared. And he started preaching and Tony already ran out. Genesis chapter 13. We continue with Abram and Lot. Genesis 13 verses 1 through 13. Genesis chapter 13. Moses writes for us. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, and silver, and in gold. He went on his journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. And the land could not sustain them while dwelling together, for their possessions were so great, they were not able to remain together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land also. So Abram said to Lot, "Please, let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If to the left, then I will go to the right, or if to the right, then I will go to the left." Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Like the garden of the Lord, and like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan. Lot journeyed eastward, thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, exceedingly, and sinners against the Lord. It takes wisdom to deal well with stuff. I remember back in the 80s when my friends and I watched baseball, and we collected baseball cards before they became $30 a pack. And there was a baseball player for the Boston Red Sox by the name of Mike Greenwell. He signed a $3 million a year contract, which was a lot of money back then. Okay, a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money for a contract. And I remember they interviewed him and they asked him, "Well, what are you going to buy? You got $3 million a year. What are you going to go out and buy?" "New pair of boots." "Why?" "Pair I got wore out." "Well, are you going to buy anything else?" "Yeah, I'm going to buy a new truck." "What? A truck?" "Yeah, mine's 15 years old. I need a new one." "Well, aren't you going to go buy a house and sports car?" "Don't need it." Probably the smartest athlete I've ever heard in my life. He understood how to deal with money. Well, we come to Abraham, and he's coming up from Egypt. And the Negev is a desert region in the south of Israel, so he's making his way through. And it says that he brought his wife up from Egypt and all that belonged with him, and his nephew, Lot. Now, every family has that family member. You know the one I'm talking about, the one that when they show up, the eyes kind of roll, and you're like, "Oh, really? He's here or she's here?" Boy, I'm hearing laughter, so evidently there's some in everybody's family. Lot's kind of this one. He's a tag-along. So we'll come back to him in a moment. Now, Abram was very rich in livestock and in silver and in gold. He had lots of stuff. I remember when lotteries first began and people started winning money. And I remember when the Powerball in New York got to be $100 million. And people all over the country were buying lottery tickets. They failed to realize that if you won $100 million, the government was going to take 40 of it. So it really was $60 million. And then they were going to tax you to get the point. What would you do if you won a lottery, or all of a sudden somebody came up to you and said, "I'm going to write you a check for $100 million. I'm going to write you a check so that at the end of it, when it's all said and done, after taxes, after everything, you have $100 million. What would you do with $100 million? I mean, we talk about this now. I mean, growing up, that was an inconceivable number. It's not anymore. What would you do with that kind? What would you do making $1 million a year? Abraham was rich, and yet he knew how to use it. Moses tells us he went on his journeys from the Negev back to where he had lived. He went back to a place that was unique and was special to them. I have a group of former soldiers who are in Northeast Alabama today. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday having a reunion. You just imagine a group of soldiers who haven't seen each other in 5 or 6 years having a reunion in the woods of Northeast Alabama, where there's a gun range and lots of stores nearby. Just leave it there. You can imagine how much fun that is. But we all have a special place. All of us do at Fort Campbell. There's what we refer to as the pylon. It's where our brigade has a pylon talking about all of, and listed all of the battles and all of the wars our brigades fought in. And behind it is the name of all of our soldiers, older soldiers who served in World War II and Vietnam, or Korea and Vietnam. And then on smaller ones are the names of soldiers who are deceased who served in previous wars. And as one of our brigade commanders said, it's as close to sacred ground as it comes for us. And it's a very special place. It's one of the things that I miss by not living there because I don't get to go very often. We all have those places that are meaningful, that we go to, that are, for lack of a better phrase, a comfort place. For whatever reason. It may be the place where you propose to your wife. The red light's still there where the carriage stopped where I asked Courtney to marry me. She didn't tear that thing down yet. It may be a school. It may be just anywhere that you go. Abraham went back, or Abram went to a place that was special to him, and verse 4 tells us why. To the place of the altar which he had made there formerly, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. It was a place where he worshipped and he had an encounter with God. We have all kinds of reasons for places being special. The pylon is special because I have friends whose names are on some of those monuments. Right next to it is a monument, and there are 3 names on it of chaplains who received the Congressional Medal of Honor from our brigade. It's a special place. But this was special to Abram because he met God. Do we have a place like that? Is there a place in all of our busyness and all of our stuff that starts tomorrow? By the way, for those of you who may not know, school starts back tomorrow. And let's say the greatest day of the year for parents. Teachers, I'm sorry, they're yours now. If you drove by Baylor this weekend, you saw this endless stream of cars going. I don't know how they figured all that out. But in the midst of everything that goes on in a week, is there a place where we go? It doesn't have to be far, but that we go where we encounter God, where we just stop. Everything else is not important. It's not an issue. It's me and God, and everything else in the world is just gone. There was for Abraham. Now Lot, who went with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. Now where Abraham was wise, and we're going to see, or Abraham, was wise, Lot was the 18-year-old, or the 21-year-old who went and bought the lottery ticket and won $100 million. Okay? He has no clue what he's doing. And have you ever run into somebody who all of a sudden comes into stuff and has absolutely no clue what they're doing? I knew a young lady once who, when she turned 16, her daddy was a very wealthy doctor in Dallas. Her daddy bought her a brand new Mercedes for her 16th birthday. And she was mad at her daddy. She wanted a Porsche. She was paying for nothing. No car payments, no gasoline, no nothing. I still to this day think that young lady has lost her mind. I told her she'd give me the keys. I'd be more than happy with it. Lot has all of this stuff. He has flocks, he has herds, he has tents, he has all of this. And we read next that the land could not sustain everybody because they had all of this stuff. They ran out of space. Because believe it or not, you can only put so many animals on so big of a piece of land and feed them and have enough water. There was no more room. So let me put this into a church setting. You have all of these ministries going on in the church, and they're all good, and they're all fine, and they're all wonderful. But there's limited people, and there's limited resources, and so they run into each other. And we read that the herdsman of Abram and the herdsman of Lot decided that, hey, my guy's more important than your guy, and so they fought over it. And so you get into a church setting, and you got ministry A over here, and B over here, and C over here, and D over here, and there's limited people for all of them, and there's limited finances and other resources, and then you get people starting to argue over who's more important. Run into an issue. Then you start to divide up. Your herdsmen start to fight with this one because this is more important than this one, and I do this and you do that. And we miss the point. The point of these two verses is not that Abram and Lot had lots of stuff and their herdsmen were fighting and there wasn't enough grass and enough water. The whole point of it comes at the very end of verse 7. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. There were unbelievers that were dwelling in the land, and Abram and Lot were too busy, their herdsmen were too busy fighting over grass to realize there were lost people. We get too busy arguing over stuff, we forget that there's lost people around. Coming up in November, we're going to have our state convention, and it's going to be just like it was last year. We're going to talk about all the good things, and we're going to talk about numbers, we're going to talk about money, and how all of this stuff was wonderful, and how we're going to go do all of these great things in the next year. And there's going to be limited people and limited resources, and then when they run headlong into each other, well, sometimes you just have to make a decision. Okay, will you make the decision? Let me back that up. Let me give you a better example from a very wise individual. If you notice in business meetings, I'm not the moderator. First church in 20 years I have not been the moderator at, and I am so happy. Being the moderator is not fun. This individual made a very good point. No matter what happens, somebody's going to be mad at you. And it's not going to be your fault. Two issues are going to come up, and you're going to say, okay, we have issue A, and this person's going to talk. We have issue B, and this person's going to talk. And people are going to vote, and let's say they vote for issue A, and people for issue B is going to be mad. And they're not going to be mad at the people who are over here on A. They're going to be mad at you because you brought it up. So it would be good if you weren't the moderator. Great advice. Best advice I've ever got in my life. I never want to be the moderator. I like the way we flip-flop it between Jerry and Tommy. I like that. I've got backups, so if you guys don't want to do it one year, I have somebody in mind to take your place. They're sitting right next to you, by the way. I think Miss Gill would make a great moderator. There were lost people in the land. And Abram and Lot were busy arguing over how many sheep they had, over how they were going to water their cows. They were sitting in a really nice building, being real proud over how many numbers they had last year at backyard Bible clubs and how much money they raised. They forgot that there were lost people. So usually when there's a fight, it's the lesser, it's the person who is the lower end of the spectrum who says, hey, let's make peace. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. So Abram said to Lot, please, Let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen. We're brothers. You all know I have 2 children who are about to go to school, and yesterday we were out doing a few little things, to have fun right before school starts. And I found myself uttering the parent phrase when asked why, and not in a polite way, because I said so. I usually will not say, please let us go here, when I've been screamed at for the last 20 minutes. Abram went to Lot and said, let's make peace about this. It wasn't his place. The land belonged to Abraham. It was promised to him. He was the one that was the superior. Yet he went to Lot and he even said, please. Now again, not to pick on the church, but the example just is best. I've been in churches since I was 3 years old. So that's 30-something years. We'll just say 38 years. I've seen fights in churches. I've seen church splits. I've seen people in churches go head to head. Rarely have I seen somebody say, hey, wait a minute. Let's stop this and figure out how to work. Please, let's stop this. Especially when they're the one in the dominant position. Abraham says, look, let's stop this. We're brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. Notice he didn't say get out. He didn't kick him out. He didn't excommunicate him. He didn't say I don't want to deal with you. He said, look, it's all in front of us. Pick something. Let's separate so there's no fights. We're still brothers. We're still friends. How many church splits you ever seen happen that way? Let's be friends about this and not fight over it. If you want to go to the right, I'll go to the left. If you want to go to the left, I'll go to the right. Let's stop fighting. Talk about churches separating. I have seen it happen. I have a friend who's a pastor. They decided that their church was going to, when they got to 500 people, they were going to split and start another church at 250. And then when the churches hit 500, they were going to split and start churches at 250. Under good circumstances. It's amazing how it worked. They knew the goal, and it worked out that way. Abram says, look, there's no reason to be fighting. There's no reason to be fighting. You know why? Because both ideas are probably pretty good, and we can make it work some way. We can figure it out. Would it surprise you to know that there's a room full of smart people here? Yeah. I've worked with almost everybody in this room on something. There's some smart people here. When we put our table up out there, the wonderful young lady who helped me decorate, just, okay, well, we can do this and we can do this. It'll do for right now. I think she did a pretty good job. I just asked for the table and had guys go at it, and it showed up. We got some pretty smart people. We can usually figure out the problems. So Abram says, look, we've got to separate. It's to the right or to the left. And so here's where we run into the big problem. Lot lifts up his eyes, and he looks at the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered. This is a big issue in the middle of a desert. You want water. It was watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. We know what's coming for them. Like the garden of the Lord, the garden of Eden, and like the land of Egypt. So he looks up, and it looks gorgeous. He sees the used car. He sees the 56 two-door Chevy. Is that the right year? And it's gorgeous. But he doesn't drive it. And he buys it. Pays $25,000 for it. Found the one he wanted. The body looks great. But he doesn't drive it. Gets it home. Gets into it. Puts the key in the ignition. Nothing. Pops the hood. Guess what? No engine. You'd never buy a car without looking at it. Lot looks at it, and it looks great. But this isn't a unique situation. Joshua later on will do the same thing. God tells him to wipe out everybody in the land, to make no treaties with anybody. a group of people called the Gibeonites shows up and says, oh, we live way far away. We're not in the land. We live way far away. And we want to make a treaty with you. So Joshua and the elders forget to pray, forget God, say, all right, we'll make a treaty with you. Send them on their way. They go home. A few weeks later, they get a call that the Gibeonites are getting beat up by another group, and they realize that they got lied to. Lot looks out over the land, and he sees the best land that there is, and he forgets all about God and says, yep, I want it. And he doesn't realize that the absolute worst of the worst sinners lives right there, and you're getting ready to have the biggest problem on the planet. It was all beautiful. It was all flash. He didn't look under the hood. He didn't take time to figure out what God would have him do. So Lot chose for himself the valley of the Jordan. He thought he was getting over on Abram. He thought he was getting the best. And so he heads east, and he's separated from Abram. He's gone from the one God promised the land because they couldn't get along. He heads east. He heads towards the biggest group of sinners on the planet, and he thinks he's won. He thinks he's got the best deal going. It's great. Abram, on the other hand, settled in Canaan. He lived in the mountains. He lived in the deserts. While Lot settled, catch the word, Abram settled where God told him to. Lot settled for worse. Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. He not only wanted to live in the valley, he backed it right up to him. And now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. He paid no attention. It looked great, and so if it looks great, it must be good. How many of us are alive to remember New Coke, that abomination? I'm the only one allowed to remember that horrible science experiment. For those of you who don't know, Coke in 1985, 84-ish, 85-ish, decided they were going to reinvent the classic Coca-Cola formula. It was nasty. It tasted like old Coke with windshield wiper fluid in it. It almost bankrupted the company. There were people that were selling cases of the original Coke for huge. You think when Twinkies went out a couple of years ago it was bad. People were selling cases of the original Coke for lots of money. Well, Coca-Cola realized we made a mistake. They all of a sudden started producing, they came out with the can. Classic Coke. That's how you can tell the good stuff from the bad stuff. But the can looked the same. When you bought it, you thought you were getting the same thing, only better. Lot thought that he was getting better because it looked good. You see, here's the thing. Even as believers, we sometimes will disagree. Okay. Believe it or not, God willing, I get to stay here the 40 years I plan on staying here, which means I'll be 80 when I retire. You all have to be here for my 80th anniversary when I retire, so just get ready. Party will be at my place. And in those 40 years, God willing, everybody in this room and I will disagree on something. Does that surprise somebody? I think there may have been a few of us that may have disagreed on something already. You're already off the list, so you're good. The rest of you, hang on. Okay? But you know what? That doesn't mean that we can't work together. You disagree with somebody, okay? You find a way to work it out. Lot didn't want to work it out. He wanted the best that there was. Well, sometimes what looks like the best isn't always that way. I'll give you one more really good example, and we'll finish. When you go to the Middle East, my mother's been to Jerusalem several times. When you go to the Middle East, you go into these shops, they'll have these beautiful, all this beautiful stuff. They'll have watches, because they know, especially men from America are into watches. And they'll have Rolexes, and they'll have Breitlings, and they'll have Omegas. These are watches that are multiples of thousands of dollars. And they'll look just like the real thing. I mean, as close as you'll ever get. And, oh, we'll make you a good deal, make you a good deal. $500. No, not going to pay it. And you must haggle with them. You know, you usually get them down to about $10. And you think you got a good deal because, I mean, it looks just like it. And you get it home, and guess what? It doesn't run. You change the battery. It still doesn't run. You take it to the jeweler. He takes it apart. Again, there's no engine in it. It doesn't run. But it looks good. Looks can be deceiving. We can get crossways because things look good. Because we forget that God said, seek me first. And it's amazing when that happens, a lot of these issues disappear. As opposed to, hey, this is a good idea, let's do it. Oh, whoops, we're 20 days into this. By the way, God, why don't you come bless what we're doing? You say, well, I see people in churches fighting all the time. Yep, put a group of sinners together and it's going to happen. Because every single one of us in this room, whether you're a believer or not, we're still sinners. Those of us who are believers, we're just redeemed sinners. Okay? I'm going to want what I'm going to want. You're going to want what you're going to want. And sometimes we're going to disagree. Okay? But the goal is to take what Christ has given to us into a world that so desperately needs it. Therein lies the goal. The goal is for us to say, you know what? It's better for me to say, you make the choice on what you want to do, and I'll take the second place. It's hard, but it works. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not a believer, here's the thing. Jesus gave up the first place so that you could have it. He put aside everything that was his by right to die so that you could have salvation. As Paul puts it in Corinthians, he became poor so that we could become rich, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. As believers, we must live the same way. I must see you and look at you and realize that what you want, as Paul says in Philippians, I should look out for your benefit and your good more than mine. And if I'm doing that, and you're doing that, and we're all doing that for each other, guess what? We're in good shape. If you're a believer, that's how we're to live. If you're an unbeliever, guess what? That's what being a Christian is. We're a family. We may disagree, but we love each other at the end of the day. And it's all going to be good. Because we're going to come together on a Sunday morning and we're going to worship God and we're going to push everything to the side. And we're going to go out Monday morning and we're going to find people and we're going to live in such a way that they see Jesus, and if we get a chance, we're going to tell them. That's who we are. And that's what we're called to be. Father, we thank you that in your wisdom that you've called us to be your people. Lord, that even when issues arise, you are the God of the church, and you are the peacemaker. That you called us as believers to be peacemakers. Jesus, in your Sermon on the Mount, you said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. May we be your children, Lord, and make peace. May we seek wisdom to use the gifts that you've given to us. May we look to the benefit of our brothers and sisters. May we look to the good of those around us. May we seek your face in each and every decision that we make. Father, may those who are here today who are not believers, may today be the day of their salvation. May today be the day that they know you as their Lord and their Savior, and become part of the family. Father, we thank you for the fact that you saved. It's in your name we pray.